I said, they saying y'all was throwing bottles at Snoop trailer. Man, the mother was about to call the police.
Jay! I need my money! Jay!
What happens when Hollywood invades a real war zone? When Denzel Washington steps into gang territory not as a visitor, but as a player in a game with no script. Training Day wasn't just a film. It was a collision between actors, real-life gangsters, and a city that doesn't forgive.
23-hour lockdown! I'm the man up in this...
Snoop Dogg wasn't acting. He was a Crip. And Bloods were outside his trailer throwing bottles. Denzel, he had to check in with the Crips just to keep filming safe.
Like, yeah, you know, he called like, yeah, Spice, yeah. He like, yeah, they had Snoop trailer out there, it's some blood over there, throwing, bottles at Snoop trailer.
And behind the scenes, the real Alonzo was based on Rafael Perez, a dirty cop so dangerous the streets and the badge became one. This wasn't fiction, this was survival.
About much more. Perez uncovered the biggest scandal in LAPD history.
Los Angeles isn't just a backdrop, it's a battlefield. And in 2001, when Training Day started production, that battlefield was still hot. You don't just roll cameras in Crenshaw or the jungles without respect or permission.
Where we were, and in the jungle, they have a policy of no cameras.
Denzel Washington knew that. Before shooting even began, he was briefed on the territory. This wasn't just acting in the hood. This was filming in an active war zone, a place run by real street generals, Crips, Bloods, hustlers, killers. And if you didn't check in, you might not walk away. So Denzel made the call. He didn't walk in with security and arrogance. He walked in like a man who understood the code. He spoke to the right people, met with OGs, asked permission to shoot scenes on their turf. And guess what? The Crips respected him for it, because in their eyes, Denzel wasn't just another Hollywood actor. He was a man who moved correctly.
The world they're in. I wanted the whole crew to get in the environment, see the people.
That move probably saved the production, because just a few blocks away, real drama was already brewing, and not everybody on set understood what kind of powder keg they were sitting on.
The gang members are the guys that gave me permission to come into their neighborhoods. They were so supportive, and I wanted them to be in the movie.
While Denzel checked in, Snoop Dogg was checking out, a known Crip walking into a set, crawling with Bloods, fake cops, and real tension. Some say Snoop had drama waiting for him the moment he showed up. In the situation, it was about to get hostile. It wasn't even noon yet, but the temperature on set was boiling. Not from the sun, from the streets. Because the second Snoop Dogg showed up on location, the Bloods clocked it, and they were not happy. They started slow. Bottles, yells, then it got louder, closer. Real Bloods from the neighborhood didn't care that this was a movie set. They saw a known Crip, Snoop Dogg, posted up in their hood. To them, that was disrespectful, security, powerless. This wasn't Hollywood beef. This was real politics. Even Denzel couldn't stop this kind of smoke. But someone else stepped in, a Bay Area legend, real one, not an actor, a respected street general. He heard what was going on and didn't flinch. He marched over straight into the chaos. Word is, he stood between the Bloods and Snoop's trailer, told them to chill. And like that, the tension eased. So not because of contracts, not because of security, because respect still mattered in the streets, and Spice One had it. Snoop tells it differently though. In one version of the story, he walked outside, offered the oldest Blood OG a blunt, said they talked it out like men, peace pipe style. It's a great story. But people who were there say, he's sugarcoating it. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But one thing's for sure, Snoop wasn't acting, and neither were they. This was real tension, in real time. And the Bloods weren't the only ones watching, because the man Denzel was pretending to be, he was based on someone real too. And that man, he was far more dangerous than anyone on set.
I see him and they look at me and he like, damn, Blood. He like, that look like Spice One, Blood.
Before Denzel ever put on the badge, before Alonzo Harris became one of the most iconic villains in film history, there was Rafael Perez. He wasn't a character, he was a cop, sworn in by the city of Los Angeles. But he didn't protect and serve. He manipulated, he stole, he planted drugs, he murdered. They called it the Rampart Scandal, a deep, filthy infection inside the LAPD, where cops were acting like cartel enforcers. And Perez, he was the face of it all. This man didn't just patrol the streets, he ran them. He was part of an elite unit called Crash, Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums. But what he was really doing was turning the hood into his playground. Extortion, evidence tampering, framing innocent people, stealing kilos of from the evidence locker, shooting suspects in the back, then lying about it. And the LAPD, they looked the other way. For years, when it all came crashing down, more than 70 officers were investigated. Over 100 convictions were overturned. The entire justice system cracked.
This case is about much more. Perez uncovered the biggest scandal in LAPD history.
But here's the twist. When David Ayer wrote Training Day, he based Denzel's Alonzo Harris on Perez. All the slick talk, the street wisdom, the cold-blooded killings in daylight. That wasn't fiction. It was a dramatized version of Rafael Perez's life.
I'm the police. I run here. You just live here. King Kong ain't got on me.
Alonzo Harris wasn't a villain. He was a mirror, a reflection of the cops we trusted, but who turned into monsters in uniform. Perez testified that he planted drugs, beat suspects, took bribes, but the most terrifying thing, he smiled through it, as if he didn't see anything wrong. The LAPD tried to bury it. Hollywood tried to frame it as fiction, but Training Day pulled the curtain back. And when Denzel stepped into the role of Alonzo, he wasn't just acting, he was stepping into the shoes of a real demon, one with a badge. You think those extras in Training Day were just actors in baggy jeans and bandanas? Think again. Those weren't props. They were the streets themselves. When director Antoine Fuqua decided to shoot Training Day on location, he wanted realism. But what he got was way more than he bargained for. Some of the extras were real gangbangers, recruited not from casting agencies, but directly from the block. They weren't reading lines, they were reliving them. Every stare, every sneer, every body movement came from experience. One wrong word, it wasn't just a bad take, it could turn into a bad day. Even Fuqua admitted, if I had 50 extras, 20 of them were real. I was dealing with real gangsters. And while that gave the film an electric, unpredictable edge, it also turned every shoot into a gamble. Cameras were rolling, but so were tensions. There was one infamous moment during a shoot in South Central. Cameras were up, Denzel was in character, and suddenly an argument broke out off camera, not between actors, but between real Crips who had issues over a turf dispute that had nothing to do with the movie. Security froze. Crew members backed off. For a few seconds, it felt like everything could erupt. But then, the OGs stepped in, calmed it down. Why? Because they respected what was being made. Training Day wasn't some cheap Hollywood stereotype. It was telling a story that felt authentic to the streets, and that mattered. But there was another cost to that authenticity. Some of the actors started losing themselves in the roles. The vibe on set was so dark, so tense, it started bleeding into their real lives. Even Ethan Hawke, who played the rookie cop, said he'd go home at night feeling shaken. It wasn't just acting. It felt like we were stepping into a world we didn't fully understand. And he was right. Because every time the camera cut, the danger didn't. Actors were followed. Arguments spilled past the set. People were watching who weren't on payroll, watching who came and went, and whether they showed respect. Fuqua had to keep real gang leaders in his trailer during some scenes, just to keep the peace. In most films, the director yells action to start the scene. But in Training Day, the streets decided when the action started, and nobody, not even the director, could call cut.
And I wanted them to be in the movie. These guys got real scars, real bullet holes. They deal with these cops every day.
What's up, Lonzo?
All right.
What's happening with your down moves?
It's all good. It's all good.
Didn't want to tell you, man. Appreciate what you did for my nephew.
When Training Day dropped, it wasn't just a movie, it was a mirror. In the LAPD, they didn't like what they saw staring back at them. Alonzo Harris wasn't just a character, he was an open wound. The kind of cop people whispered about but couldn't prove. Until Training Day hit the screen and gave that silence a face, a name, a badge with blood on it. And the real LAPD, they were pissed.
Palms on the glass.
You move those hands, I'll slap the taste out of your mouth. You understand me? Put your face right up against the glass.
Behind closed doors, the film caused waves. It premiered just a few years after the Rampart scandal, a real-life explosion where over 70 LAPD officers were implicated in drug dealing, planting evidence, bank robbery, assault, and even murder. And right at the heart of that scandal, Rafael Perez, the same man who inspired Denzel's character. Some officers called the film a smear job. Others stayed quiet because they knew the truth hit too close. Training Day didn't invent the story. It just showed the public what many already lived with in silence. Perez admitted to stealing over 6 pounds of from evidence lockers. He also implicated dozens of his fellow officers in crimes straight out of a horror script. He planted guns. He framed gang members. He beat suspects until they confessed to things they didn't do. And the worst part, he made a deal, testified, got out early. A walking symbol of betrayal, both to the law and from it. So when the LAPD saw Denzel Washington, suave, corrupt, ruthless, holding that badge on the big screen, they didn't see fiction. They saw their own worst secret in 4K. And the public, they saw the truth. After the movie, departments across the country faced new heat. Internal affairs got more tips. Activists used training day clips as proof of systemic. The blue wall didn't fall, but it cracked. Even Denzel felt it. In an interview, he admitted, "I don't know how a cop could watch this and not feel something. But here's the part nobody talks about. The streets, they already knew. They'd seen Alonzo Harris before, in traffic stops, in interrogation rooms, in alleyways with no cameras and no rules. Training day didn't teach them anything new. It just finally told their side of the story. The movie may have ended, but for the LAPD, it was just the beginning of the fallout. Because when you expose a system that protects its you don't just make a film, you light a fuse.
As many as 20 officers have been relieved of duty.
The atrocities that were committed by myself
while he was screaming in apparent agony. Next week, the police department releases its internal investigation of the corruption scandal, but many question its fairness. Even
when all was said and done, after the sirens stopped, the bottles were picked up, the Crips went silent, and the Bloods went home. What remained wasn't just a movie, it was a masterpiece. But this wasn't the kind of masterpiece born in a Hollywood soundstage or a neatly controlled film set. No, this was something forged in fire. Chaos turned into cinema. Training Day didn't just survive the madness, it absorbed it. It became a living, breathing reflection of everything happening just outside the frame. Every glare, every pause, every whispered threat on screen carried with it the weight of real fear, real danger, and somehow all that real tension, that raw, unfiltered street energy bled into every single shot. You could feel it in Denzel's eyes, that mix of power and paranoia. In Ethan Hawke's hesitation, the unease of a rookie cop realizing he's neck deep in something way over his head. You could feel it in the stillness of the alleys, the grit in the graffiti-covered walls, the way the sun hit those streets just right, because those weren't props. Those were battlegrounds. This was no longer just a movie about the streets. This was the streets. But here's the twist. Despite the near violence, despite the gang politics, despite walking on the edge of total collapse with every call sheet, Training Day worked. And not just worked in the usual Hollywood sense, it detonated. It exploded into theaters with all the weight of a cultural reckoning. Denzel Washington didn't just act, he transformed. He took home the Academy Award for Best Actor, delivering one of the most iconic, most unsettling performances of the 21st century. And here's the part that Hollywood rarely admits: that performance, that energy, that fire. It didn't come from method acting or long rehearsals. It came from everything that was happening around him.
Denzel Washington.
This is the 5th Academy Award nomination for Denzel Washington and his 2nd Oscar.
The Crips watching from the rooftops, the Bloods circling the trailers, the crew praying they'd make it through a shoot day without someone pulling up and pressing the wrong button. Every scene was a gamble, every street a chessboard. Antoine Fuqua, the man behind the camera, didn't flinch. He didn't sanitize it, he didn't Hollywoodize it. He let the chaos breathe. He leaned into the noise. And somehow from the middle of all that tension, he pulled out gold.
Los Angeles is like, we've been able to sit down with members of Bloods and members of the Crips and film in Imperial Courts and film in the jungle, and we would not have been able to do the things we do.
Ethan Hawke, he didn't just support Denzel, he held his own. Delivered a performance so nuanced, so tight, it earned him an Oscar nomination too. Together, these two created a dynamic so electric, so explosive, it changed the rules of the cop drama forever. But beyond the awards, beyond the red carpets and the critical acclaim, Training Day became something bigger. It became a cultural artifact, a raw, uncut time capsule of Los Angeles in the early 2000s. It reminded the world of something that Hollywood too often forgets. You can't fake real. Because when Hollywood stops pretending, when it stops casting stuntmen in gang roles and actually listens to the voices on the ground, something rare happens, something dangerous, something honest. Most films would never dare take that route. Most directors wouldn't risk it, but Training Day did. It dove headfirst into the fire and came out the other side with something unforgettable. It wasn't just a film, it was a blueprint. It was dangerous, it was raw, it was risky, but damn, it was real.
I'm more interested in people who have seen some things in life. Life teaches you much more than anybody can ever teach you in an acting class. You know, and these people have seen, if you look at each character, they've been through it.
This movie is very much about LA speaking for itself and being what it is, and Antoine is.
After all the smoke cleared, after the award speeches and the box office numbers, there was something no one could deny. Training Day changed the game, not just for Denzel, not just for Antoine Fuqua, but for Hollywood itself. Because before this film, hood stories were just that. Low budget, small scope, background noise in the industry. They weren't seen as Oscar material. They weren't shot with A-list stars. They didn't get multi-million-dollar backing or national campaigns. But Training Day flipped that on its head. Suddenly, the world saw something different. They saw power in the grit. They saw truth in the chaos. They saw that what happens in South Central isn't just a footnote. It's a whole narrative that deserves the spotlight.
You loving it, huh? You like that? All right. Any of y'all can be a camera operator one day. Any of y'all.
And I wanted to bring something positive to the community. I wanted them to see a film being made, you know, some magic.
Denzel's portrayal of Alonzo Harris wasn't just award-winning, it was revolutionary. Here was a black man in a lead role, dominating the screen, complex and dangerous, layered and magnetic, and the world couldn't look away. And behind the camera, Antoine Fuqua carved a lane for future black directors to tell their stories with cinematic weight. Real budgets, real casts, real cities. Training Day proved something Hollywood had long ignored. You don't need to sanitize the streets to make art. You need to respect them.
It needed to be something unusual, something different, and it's dangerous, and that's good.
From that moment on, street narratives got a second look. From The Shield to Power, from Snowfall to The Wire, you can trace the fingerprints of Training Day on every gritty crime drama that came after. And guess what? It all started because one actor checked in with the Crips, one rapper faced down the Bloods, and one director refused to play it safe. This wasn't just a movie, it was a revolution in real time. When the cameras stopped rolling, the danger didn't. See, for most films, once the final shot is done, the crew wraps up, the actors take off their costumes, and the story lives safely in the editing room. But Training Day wasn't most films, because for some of the people on that set, the streets they were filming on weren't just backdrops, they were home. And sometimes, they were war zones. Some of the extras weren't actors playing gang members, they were gang members. Some were real Crips, some were Bloods, some were parolees trying to keep their head down, just hoping to earn a check and make it to the end of the week alive. Others, they were posted on set, not for lines or lighting cues, but to keep things in balance, keep the peace between rival energies if possible. For the cast and crew, this wasn't just about blocking scenes or perfecting dialogue. Every day on set was like walking a tightrope stretched across a live wire. They weren't just making a movie, they were making it in a space where any wrong move could spark something very real, very fast. Denzel Washington wasn't just there to perform, he was there to navigate. He understood the weight of where he was and how easily the wrong look, the wrong move, the wrong line set off camera could change everything. So he moved with respect, with humility, with wisdom. Antoine Fuqua didn't just direct from a chair, he directed from the middle of a cultural battlefield. He respected the terrain, spoke with the locals, and gave space to voices that Hollywood often ignores. That trust, it bought them safety, it bought them truth. And when the production wrapped and the crew went home, the hood didn't change. The cameras shut off. The awards came later. Denzel walked away with an Oscar. Ethan Hawke earned the role of a lifetime. Snoop Dogg returned to a Crip life still under a spotlight. Fuqua made history, but the streets, they stayed bleeding, still surviving, still loud, still real. Training Day didn't just borrow the hood, it gave it a voice. And because of that, it lives forever. Not just as a film, but as a moment where Hollywood looked the ghetto in the eye and didn't blink. And in that moment, Denzel was right. King Kong ain't got nothing on them.
King Kong ain't got on me!
If you thought Training Day was wild, wait till you see what really happened behind the next badge. Because in this game, the real story is always dirtier than the script. See you soon.